Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Thus situated in the renounced order from the beginning of their lives, all three of them completely controlled the activities of their senses and thus became great saints. They concentrated their minds always upon the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the resting place of the totality of living entities, and who is therefore celebrated as Vasudeva. Lord Vasudeva is the only shelter of those who are actually afraid of material existence. By constantly thinking of his lotus feet, these three sons of Maharaj Priyavrata became advanced in pure devotional service. By prowess of their devotional service, they could directly perceive the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated in everyone's heart as the Supersoul, and realize that there was qualitatively no difference between themselves and him. It's kind of interesting that in this purport, Prabhupada talks about the different stages of sannyas. Sannyas is also mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. I think it's in the 9th chapter. Does that book exist here, the Bhagavad Gita? Yeah, maybe someone can get it. I think it's in the 9th chapter. Anyway, there's something about sannyas in there. And really, what it means there, I'll just, if that's the right place, I'll read it. Samushabhu halayareva mokshayase shayase karma bhandana sannyasa yoga yuktanam vimuktayam mamapashyasi. So in this particular verse, sannyasa is translated as renunciation, and this is I'll read the verse in purport. In this way you will be freed from bondage to work. This is Krishna speaking to Arjuna. In this way you will be freed from bondage to work, and its auspicious and inauspicious results. With your mind fixed on me, this principle of renunciation will be liberated. You will be liberated and come to me. Purport. One who acts in Krishna consciousness under superior direction is called yukta. The technical term is yukta vairagya. This is further explained by Rupa Goswami as follows. And then he quotes the yukta vairagya verse, Nasaktasha Vishayan, Yitarham Payunjita, Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe Yuktam Vairagya Uchite, from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Rupa Goswami says that as long as we are in this material world, we have to act. We cannot cease acting. Therefore, if actions are performed and the fruits are given to Krishna, then that is called yukta vairagya, actually situated in renunciation. Such activities clear the mirror of the mind, and as the actor gradually makes progress in spiritual realization, he becomes completely surrendered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, at the end, he becomes liberated, and this liberation is also specified. By this liberation, he does not become one with the Brahma-jyoti, but rather enters into the plan of the Supreme Lord. It is clearly mentioned here, Mamo Paishyasi. He comes to me, back home, back to Godhead. There are 5 different stages of liberation, and here it is specified that the devotee who has always lived his lifetime here, under the direction of the Supreme Lord, as stated, has evolved to the point where he can, after quitting this body, go back to Godhead and engage directly in the association of the Supreme Lord. Anyone who has no interest but to dedicate his life to the service of the Lord is actually a sannyasi. Such a person always thinks of himself as an eternal servant, dependent on the supreme will of the Lord. As such, whatever he does it for the benefit of the Lord. Anyway, our time is a bit short, so I'll read the rest of this purport. But it's kind of interesting that Prabhupada alludes to sannyas here in the purport. And sannyasa, as is explained in the Bhagavad Gita, is not necessarily one of being a kutichak or a bahudak or a parivrajikacharya or a paramhansa, but one who is in this renounced state of mind of giving everything to Krishna. And the Yukta Vairagya concludes that one should be detached from everything, but attached to Krishna. That's real renunciation, not just wearing a particular type of dress or attaining a certain order of life. And it's also interesting, I think it was Bhaktivinoda that wrote in his, was it Daivi, and there's one of his writings, in which he said that unless one is on that level of Paramahansa, it's necessary for everyone else to gratify their desires, whether they're spiritual, emotional, or intellectual, or physical. They have to be gratified, unless one is on the highest stage. So he talks about the highest stage. Anyway, Prabhupada also mentions here about liberation. I think it was in this Bhagavad Gita. What is liberation? And Madhvacharya mentions that real liberation, there are these different types of liberation, samipya, samukya, sharsti, and so on. Salokya and svarupya and sayuja is supposed to be not considered, but it's written the devotee in the Srimad Bhagavatam and also as well as in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the devotee is not interested in liberation, even though liberation means to be free from the material life. But devotees are more interested in attaining the lotus feet of the Lord. And Madhvacharya says the real liberation is attaining the lotus feet of the Lord, not being free from material existence, because, as is mentioned in the purport here, that one can be liberated and still be impersonally liberated. But that's not a very secure position to be liberated in the Brahmajyoti or within the body of Krishna. The real liberation is to be engaged in the loving service of the lotus feet of the Lord, according to Madhvacharya and according to Srila Prabhupada. So I guess we're a little bit over time, and we have time for maybe one or two comments or questions if anyone wants to say something. Huh?
That memories. That
I was going to read this. I think it was said in one of the classes here about the percentages that you have to be pure in order to go back to Godhead. So I did a little bit of research and found out that this is actually taken from a lecture by Bhagavatam Goswami. So I'm going to read that portion of his lecture. When Srila Prabhupada was giving a lecture about how this is from the Memories book. So this is also on a videotape. Once Srila Prabhupada was giving a lecture, this is Bhagavatam Goswami speaking, about how we have to be cent%, that's 100%, Krishna consciousness. He was ramming home the point that we have to surrender to Krishna 100%. At the end of the class, the devotees were serious. They were looking down, thinking, quote, who can come up to the standard of complete surrender, end quote. As he could read their minds, Prabhupada relaxed his mood a little bit and said, if you can be 90% Krishna conscious, then you can also go back to Godhead. He was on a large high Vyasasana, 4 feet in the air, and had to go down some steps to get off the Vyasasana. As he started down, he said, even if you are 80% surrendered, Krishna will still take you. He then got off the Vyasasana and started walking away. His chadar was flowing behind him, dragging on the ground. He stopped, looked at the devotees and said, even if you are 70% Krishna conscious, still Krishna will take you. He threw his chadar over his shoulder and walked off with his head high. Anyway, that's as far as it's documented.
Does it go down any further for people like us?
Just quoting what he said.
Maharaj, it says somewhere that, you say you're not supposed to take sannyas, right? One of the...
Yeah, it's a verse in the age of Kali.
What's the contradiction there, saying that,
Well, Prabhupada did a few things that seemed to contradict some things that were said in Shastras. But he gave sannyas to people who weren't even necessarily qualified to take it. But he did it anyway. So...
You think that was just a time and place and needed those people to...
That's what some people say. It was the time and place.
Yeah. So that time and place, real Kaladeshapatra overruled the actual Vedic sort of authorities in a way.
It's a very difficult thing to understand because Prabhupada said that he never invented anything and everything has to be confirmed by Guru Shastra and Sadhu. So it's one of the points that I've never completely resolved in my mind. I don't know if anyone else has.